Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. This is the first coffee hour session. I'm still waiting for a few more folks to join us. It's early in the morning. I hope everyone has their coffee. Sorry, we don't have the donuts here, but we definitely have a lot of information to share. To start with, let me first and foremost share my screen so that we can go through the agenda this morning. I apologize. I have to remind everyone to please mute yourself so that folks are able to hear me while I'm presenting the introduction and some of the ground rules. I still see some of the folks unmuted, and I'm going to mute. Thank you. So I hope everyone can see my screen. Let me start by a quick introduction to the staff who are present today and who will be helping me throughout the presentation, as well as are involved in the Hartwell Rezoning initiative. And I'll start with Carol Kowalski, who's the Assistant Town Manager for Development. I also have Amanda Loomis, who is the Planning Director, Sheila Page, who's the Assistant Planning Director. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Carol. I also have Casey Haggerty, who is the Economic Development Coordinator. And we also have Stella Carr, who's the Sustainability Director. And I'm Sandhya Iyer. I am the Economic Development Director for the town of Lexington. Some of the ground rules I just wanted to remind folks. I know this is coffee hour. We don't have a lot of ground rules, just that please remain mute at all times unless you're called upon. Please direct your questions to chat or Q&A during the presentation. The raise hand function or raise your hand during the Q&A session if you're unable to look at the raise hand function. If you're dialing using your phone and you're unable to mute yourself at some point, we will be sharing phone number. We will be sharing some of the information. You can reach us through email via any of those modes and direct your questions to us by that. We also have a survey that you can use wherein you can post your questions. Again, a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The recorded meeting and all the resources that we'll be discussing today will be available on the town website, LexingtonMA.gov/economic development/Hartwell zoning initiative. Please do respond to the quick survey, and I can post the survey link on the chat as well, so that folks can respond during the presentation or after the presentation. Amanda, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yep, I'm here.
Great. So I will be now passing the mic to Amanda so that she can start with the presentation.
You want to share the presentation?
Yeah. Are you able to? Oh, I have to stop. Okay, I'm going to.
Why don't you share the presentation on your screen?
Yeah. Are you able to see the presentation on the screen? Okay, sounds great.
Great, awesome. Great, so we're just going to do a brief walkthrough. Is my internet, keep saying unstable, can everyone hear me? No?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. It just keeps flashing unstable, so if I keep going. So what we're doing right now is we are actually working on 4 within the Land Use, Health, and Development Department. These include the comprehensive plan, which is kind of the roadmap for the next 5, 10, 15 years of land use initiatives. Then we are working on, next slide. Then there's a transportation management overlay district. And then the Hartwell Rezoning Initiative, which is why most of you are here this morning, which is a major project that's been under the works for about 2 years. Then also on the other side, we're working on the special permit residential zoning amendment, which is an ad hoc committee that is working on a revision to that zoning. Next slide, please. And Sadia, do you want to talk about the vision for Hartwell?
Yes, thank you. So the vision that this Hartwell rezoning initiative, we have been discussing the Hartwell initiative for the past, I believe the town has been discussing for the past 3 years. The vision is something that everyone is familiar with. The vision is to create a future of the corridor with spaces that that are much more inviting and kind of help us attract more commercial development in the Hartwell corridor. Throughout the presentation, I do want to remind you folks that that we are talking about the commercial redevelopment, but this is the first phase that we are in. But we will be having future phases in which we'll be talking about rest of the zoning, which means the housing component of the Hartwell rezoning initiative. Amanda, if you can speak about the objectives, thank you.
So there are 4 major things that we are making sure that we're mindful of throughout this entire process, which are project objectives, include the landowners/developers, the residential neighborhoods that directly abut the project area, the Lexington community as a whole, and then staff and permitting authority. So when we're looking at the rezoning of this area, we are keeping all 4 of these categories or groups of people in mind. So the landowners, we know they want a clear, predictable, efficient permitting process. They want to know what the rules are, so when they are coming in, nothing is changing. They can give the staff and also the community everything that they want. So we will make sure that everything is laid out clearly. Then we know that the resident neighborhoods to the north, the south, and the east and west all want to make sure that we address traffic and safety concerns. But we also want to make sure that the permitting process is transparent and it also allows for meaningful engagement. The Lexington community as a whole, we do know that we want reasonable economic development opportunities, which means increase in tax revenue, opportunities for jobs, and then also to attract uses that are desirable for the community to continue to grow its tax base. Staff and permitting want to make sure that we get everything up front so we're not chasing the developers for the additional information, which actually creates delays in the permitting process. So next slide, please. I think did you skip one or is this?
So this is the process.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So the process, what we're going to be doing is looking at creation of the district boundaries, which is the area that will be zoned as the Hartwell Innovation District. Then we'll be having dimensional standards, which, as most people know, that both for 1 and 2 of this list are under a citizen's petition. So we are just seeing what's going to happen with that one. Then design standards are going to be developed. That's going to include how the project looks, feels, and features, which will also include sustainability, pedestrian amenities, streetscape furniture, etc. Then we have the zoning bylaw, which is actually how the site gets designed and laid out in accordance to our regulations, and define the permitted uses, which is our table of uses. The one thing that we always want to make sure that people are aware of is that there's a difference between a zoning bylaw and design regulations. The zoning bylaw is in the bylaw. It takes town meeting to actually amend it. And that is where we're going to put all the information regarding the permitting process, the requirements that projects have to meet. The design standards are more of how does it feel, how does it look when you're actually in the project. Those go in the planning board's regulations, and that allows for the design of the project. So the best way to think about it is if you're looking at it as a crow fly, that's how the zoning bylaw would regulate it, and also the height and density. Design standards are if you're actually within the project, how it feels, how you move around, what's there. Next slide, please. So this is the mapping area. We have the one on the left is the, actually the one on the right is the orange boundaries. And then we have the lavender, which is commercial properties, and the yellow is the residential. And I'll let Sadia talk a little bit more about this one as well.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. So we have started doing some of the communications outreach as this is the first outreach that we had, but we wanted to have clear communications with the coordination between communication with the residential as well as with the commercial property owners, so that everyone gets to know where the project stands, and if they have any questions about the rezoning, they can ask us. Again, I do want to stress that this is a community effort, and the staff is presenting or providing some of the guidance of how the zoning bylaw will look and feel like, but we do want your input so that we can develop a zoning bylaw which will be effective and accepted by everyone here in Lexington. So the area that you're looking at on the right is the one that we are definitely concentrating, but that doesn't mean that the area is not spread throughout Lexington, as well as adjacent towns like town of Bedford. And thank you, Alicia Scandoval, for joining us. She is the Economic Development Director for town of Bedford, and we also have some of the other stakeholders here who are from the state.
You just got muted, Sonia. Okay, you're not muted any longer.
I apologize. I'm trying to manage a couple of different screens here. So I was just saying that we have several different stakeholders in throughout this project, and we want to hear from each and every stakeholder, so that we can create clear and efficient and effective zoning bylaw for Hartwell Avenue. On the left hand side, this is again a reminder of the vision that was presented a while ago, and there are some of the parcels that you can see. In the left, you can see 475 Bedford, which is on the Bedford Street. Again, this is under the Citizens article. The rest of the parcels are on the left are on the Hartwell Avenue. So we still are looking at the boundary, but something that we will be discussing throughout the process. So here's the initiative timeline. We keep mentioning about the Citizens article, so which is being presented during the fall town meeting. The town meeting started last night, so I hope some of you attended that session. But we'll be having 5 more sessions of town meeting, and town meeting members will be able to vote on the Citizens article, and the article is I believe 16, 17, and 18. Which are related to the Hartwell rezoning project. And the staff is currently, today we started the communication outreach process with this coffee hour. We will be having throughout October, November, December, and January, we'll be having outreach sessions, and the next slide is about all the times and on the top and topics that we'll be discussing throughout this throughout the four months, so that we can have a zoning bylaw with the discussion and inputs from you. And the final outcome or the discussion would be during the spring annual town meeting, wherein we request all the town meeting members to vote on the zoning articles. So here's the timeline of public outreach. So this morning we have the coffee hour. October 29th, we'll be discussing stormwater and conservation. And again, we'll give you a short review of what we discussed today, going through some of the recap and also discussing what are some of the upcoming issues. November 10th, we'll be having design guidelines. I do want to remind you that the rest of the sessions are going to be 2 hours and they'll be conducted in the evening so that we can have more participants join. We wanted to have a specific morning hour session today, but the rest of the session are in the evening between 7 to 9. Then we'll be having public forums, which are much more formal forums that are very specific to the zoning bylaw and all the feedback and all, and it will be much more of a discussion and not just an information session. And we really want to see all your input throughout the session. So the first one would be zoning bylaw and the design guidelines. The next one would be sustainability. On December 7th, December 14th, we'll be discussing transportation. January 7th, we will be discussing the draft zoning proposal. And the previous session would actually help us draft some of the things for the zoning article. The last and the final one is January 21st, when we should have a final zoning recommendation that we can share with everyone. Before I go into introducing the team again and have them speak, I do want to let everyone know that these all the materials, everything that we discussed today is available on our website, and you can revisit them anytime. There are like specific sessions that I just let you know. If you are interested in any of those, you can sign up or let us know which sessions you are interested in. And the Survey Monkey has one of those questions, and you can enter which session you are interested in, so that we make sure that you have the Zoom link and information for that session prior to any of those sessions that I just mentioned. But I do encourage everyone to participate in all the sessions so that we can develop a cohesive zoning bylaw. So as a reminder, we have Carol Kowalski, who's the Assistant Town Manager for Development. We have Amanda Loomis, we just heard from. She's the Planning Director, and I'm the Economic Development Director. Sheila Page, Assistant Planning Director. Casey Haggerty, Economic Development Coordinator, and Stella Carr, who's the Sustainability Director. We also have our email addresses. So if you have specific questions for any of us, please feel free to reach out at any point throughout the communications outreach sessions or beyond that. We are very happy to answer or at least guide you throughout this process. You can reach out or get in touch with us via phone. We have a specific a number that we have for Hartwell, which is 781-918-3350. You can also look at all the materials so far. The vision, if you want a reminder for the vision, please, I would encourage everyone to go over and look at some of the presentations that were made by David Campbell, R.J. Kelly, as well as Ted Browitz, who is currently helping us with the rezoning articles as well as the design guidelines. And you can also look at some of the citizens petitions that is available. Social media, please follow us on Facebook, and you can tweet anything regarding Hartwell rezoning by having hashtags like HIP, Hartwell Innovation Park Lexington, or hashtag let's talk. Sorry, it's a mouthful. Hartwell. Thank you, everyone. And I am going to stop sharing my screen, and can open this for questions and discussion at this point. Yes, I'm gonna go all the way up so that I can look at some of the questions. So this is not the planning board link. It is the land use link that I'm using for the Zoom meeting session. Some of this is related to recording. So we are recording the session and it will be available on our website. Yes, the public outreach, if you want, I can share that entire schedule again, and it will be available on our website as well later. Yes, thank you. Great. Let me first and foremost post the link to SurveyMonkey so that everyone has that. I'm curious to see if anyone has any comments. We're happy to take any questions or comments that you have. So let me, yes, please. I do see. No, you may raise your hand and we can, or unmute yourself if you're unable to unmute. Let us know. Let me unmute you. Avram, you had a question? I think you have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, well, I have lots of questions, but I'll only start with one. Let's see. So there was, I asked a question about a traffic study. This was a while ago at a planning board meeting. There was, I don't know if a second traffic study has been conducted, and I don't remember the name of the consultants who conducted the study that I'm thinking of, but I did get a rather detailed response from Mr. Canali from the planning board about it, which indicated that, you know, a large number of new cars, this development, if it goes as planned, would actually be bringing a large number of new cars into the local environment. But my question there is, it's not really about the number of new cars or anything like that. It's, has there been a second traffic study, and has that first traffic study that I was referring to and that Mr. Canali responded to with a lot of interesting information, has that first traffic study been sort of thrown in the trash by the town? Is the town no longer considering that traffic study as part of this discussion?
I can answer that. So that traffic study was, I think the one you're thinking of was by Stantec.
Yes,
in 2018. I think the accounts were actually probably taken in 2017. The town felt that the counts were, the actual counts were accurate to what we expected, but their analysis, we were not quite pleased with the analysis. We have an RFQ out to conduct another analysis to update the traffic mitigation plan for the Hartwell Avenue area. That RFQ closes on October 22nd. And the consultant will, we're a little bit in a predicament because the traffic has not normalized because of the COVID pandemic. We plan to use the 2018 traffic counts and use this current new proposed zoning to kind of conduct a build-out analysis to get hopefully an accurate expectation, an accurate projection of the traffic. So that is kind of happening concurrently, although we don't expect that study to be finished till sometime in the spring.
Would it be completed? So I would, I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2. I'm very interested in the conclusions from that study. I would expect that it's going to be done available well before Springtown meeting. Would that be?
Yes, so I don't know the exact timeline, but yeah, we expect to start it well before town meeting, and we will be having some additional public forums to follow that process through the winter. So I can't say that it'll be actually completed by town meeting, but I think we'll have a good idea of what to expect before town meeting.
Okay, fair enough.
And actually for all of you here, that public outreach will be also happening starting in December, and we'll link it. You can find all the information on the Hartwell page so that you can kind of track what's going on, because we'll get awfully busy soon.
So I see Dawn, I know Dawn McKenna messaged me that she has a chat. She's unable to raise her hand, so I think you can call on her.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Casey and Sandhya. And just for other people, what David Horton is reporting is how he gets in. I don't have that raise hand button or comment anywhere on my screen, so thank you for recognizing me through the chat. I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I appreciate all the work that's been done on this. And I like the idea of branding the area of Hartwell Innovation Park. With that, I would like to say, at least initially, since this is a new adventure for all of us, Hartwell Ave is, a self-contained area. It has that park-like feel. I would be very leery of adding anything to the district that is not part of Hartwell Avenue, at least initially. It can always be amended to add other places later if it proves to be successful. So that was one comment. The other comment is, I think that where you talked about in the beginning, the community and what the community agrees with, I think you're right in terms of the actual uses. We've spent many, many years trying to push the biotech and that industry for lots of different reasons, and I think there's a lot of support for that. I think where this project has stalled repeatedly is that there is not consensus on the housing piece. And I do think if consultants, I would not say that that's something that we all agree on, because we don't. I, for one, am not somebody who supports housing, and I'm certainly willing to think about it in the future. But I think we have lots of areas in town where you can put housing. We don't have areas in town where you can do commercial. This is one of just a couple of commercial corridors that we have for this type of development. And so I really want to caution you not to go down that path right now, because I think you've got plenty of momentum to make something happen even as soon as this year's town meeting. But I think it will get mired down if there's too much emphasis on the housing. And I will readily admit that there are people who are adamantly for housing. But if you look at the history of town meeting over the years, there's a lot of pushback when you come to add housing from people who don't share the same view. Idea to make more two families available throughout town failed in town meeting. And this is a common area for commercial development that we all agree on. So I would just urge you to focus on that. and get the success where you can before you leap down a path that is going to really, I think, derail otherwise a very good project. So thank you.
Thank you. This is Amanda. So just to follow up on that, so this first part of Hartwell does not include housing. We are focusing solely on the commercial, which seems like it has a lot of consensus on the direction for moving forward. The special permit residential is a different project, which is actually looking at the single family zoning districts, not the Hartwell area, just so there's no confusion on that. But we need to do additional research into housing, which is why housing is not even a component of this part, but looking at it for a future part along with other uses that weren't really studied as well as the life sciences or the commercial. And I don't know if Sadia wants to add anything into that one.
No, I think that's great. I do agree with Amanda that one of the reasons, but the other thing I wanted to remind is beyond this, we will be having the housing component in, we will be doing all our research, and we are doing our research currently, and we'll be coming back with the housing component, but later, probably in 2022, which is just down the corner, I would say. So we will be having more discussion about housing throughout the process. But at this point, the zoning articles that we are talking about will be just related to the commercial component of this project.
I do see that there's, I'm sorry, Dawn.
Yeah, I just want to follow up to be clear, because I understand what you're looking to do, because I followed the process and appreciate that you're not planning on doing the housing, but your messaging matters. And that one of the very first slides you showed us was the 4 different groups that are interested in this project and have different ideas. And you specifically, if you want to put up that slide so people can see what I'm talking about, you specifically say that what the residents want is housing. And the residents don't agree that they want housing. So my point is, in that particular paragraph, I would not use that language. If you want to, somewhere in your presentation, say that there will be a discussion about this down the line, but it's not part of this project, because anybody reading that very quickly will think that it is part of the project. And I get that it's not, and it shouldn't be, but you don't want to turn people off who don't necessarily read all the details or follow these meetings or anything like that. So the messaging matters. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dawn. I think that
Sandy, I'll just add, I think someone in the chat asked a question, I think very similar to what we just answered, but I'll just read it anyway. What degree is the intent of this to be only business or industrial, or is the intent to be mixed use, similar to University Ave in Norwood? So I don't know if we want to expand upon that at all, or if we've touched on that.
I can take that one if you want, or anyone else.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so there's been a lot of visioning that's gone on over the years, and the idea was to allow for additional uses. We know that there are some restaurants like the Rev that have recently opened up within the Hartwell area, but there is a lot of area within the setbacks and around to allow for infill development. So over time, you may see the area evolve into more of a mixed-use campus. At the start of it, it may be more focused on just commercial uses of life sciences with restaurants. And then as things start to infill more, then more uses like what you see at University Ave in Norwood come in. But at the beginning, you're going to just see a lot more of the job creation of life sciences and offices. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And then we have Cindy Aaron's hand has been up for a bit. Cindy, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Cindy Aarons. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 3. I'm also on the Sustainable Lexington Committee in town. First, I want to thank all the Land Use, Health, and Development Department, along with our Sustainability Director, for putting this kind of stuff together. This is working together and trying to have a good, well planned plan for Hartwell is really great to see, and trying and doing all this work to get feedback is really, really great. So thank you very much for that. I also want to say that it's great that you're all doing what town meeting resolution that town meeting passed in 2013, which was that climate change should be in a consideration for every decision that is made in the town. And so I think that it's great that sustainability and concerns about climate change part of the work you're doing here. The Getting to Net Zero plan, which the Lexington Board of Selectmen in 2018, then Board of Selectmen in 2018, passed, talks about a lot of the stuff that you are planning to do here, which is having design standards that include sustainability to get all of our buildings to net zero. In that plan, it was by 2043. As some of you may know who are town meeting members or part of the town, some young people are going to be coming in front of us at town meeting today to ask us to pull that in even more and get all of our town to net zero even sooner. So I think I'm looking forward to attending these sessions and really getting some great bylaws together and design standards, regulations together to get us there. One thing I'd like to sort of maybe throw out there is even maybe what you could have some of the developers or landowners do is come up with a plan of how they're going to get to net zero by 2035 or 2043, because as you know, I mean, if they're going to build now, they've got to build for their future, and they're not going to want to rebuild 10, 15 years down the line. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to I think, as Ms. Loomis had mentioned in a prior joint planning board and select board meeting, that the idea is to make Lexington really stand out and really look to the future, not only for our town but for our region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Again, thank you everyone for joining, but I do want to recognize that we also have folks from town of Bedford, especially select board member Margaret, and I do see her raising her hand, and we'll get to you. And Elisa Scandwell has also joined. Also, our own select board members, Mark Sandy and Susie Barry, are also with us. So we are, and EDAC members are here as well. So I do recognize a lot of you have recognized that we are not able to see the raise hand button feature, but I do see people waving their hands, and we'll be getting back to you if you have questions. So let me unmute Tom here. I have been seeing his hand. Thank you, Tom.
Hi, thank you, Tom Scheipel. Just want to come back to the housing part. I'm wholeheartedly in support of the commercial redevelopment of Hartwell Ave. The part I don't really get is the staged approach with the housing and the mixed use. It just seems, I mean, I understand, as Ms. McKenna says, that it's going to be difficult to reach consensus, but supposing at some point in the future we do reach consensus as a community to introduce housing, say in a few years, my question would be, like, how will Hartwell look different in 2030 if we start first with just the commercial part and then introduce the housing later, versus if, suppose that we could all agree today on the housing component and we started off with both at the same time? It just seems that by giving kind of commercial a head start, you end up with a different area than if housing was introduced at the same time. So does anybody have a comment on that?
Yeah, so the big thing is we need to figure out what type of housing, if housing is to go into this location. There is many types of housing that are coming down the pipeline, which include workforce housing, which gears more towards people that are actually making that a higher salary, but can't actually afford housing within areas. So we need to look at that. There's also discussions about looking more into 40R, but the other thing is if you're a commercial property, there's certain commercial uses that you're not going to have residential within the same building, such as a laboratory building. you don't want to have residents in the same exact building. So you would want them in different areas, which is why we're looking more into that. The other big thing is commercial is much harder to attract than residential. Residential is very easy to, you could have 5 people wanting to build apartments. At the end of the year, all 5 of them build. But you could be trying to attract 20 different real estate or commercial property projects, and at the end of the year, none of them move forward. So it's really looking at all of those pieces. It seems like, since I'm new, I started in January, a lot of this information has been geared towards commercial, and then residential was added on more towards the end of all this the project. So that's why we were focusing on it. The other thing is when you're looking at commercial, it's more looking at how do we make it more sustainable and also address the traffic. When you add in residential, you're now adding in the impacts to the schools, which we need to further investigate as well. And we do not have a simple answer for that. So moving forward, it is commercial because that is the direction that the town was moving in originally, but also that's where we need to make sure that we can attract it to Lexington to make sure that there's job creation.
So if I could just summarize, then I think what I hear you saying is there's no danger of all of the properties being snapped up by commercial in the next 2 years, and then basically residential would be locked out. We shouldn't be worrying about that.
At this time, I would not, because the chances of all of the parcels being snapped up by commercial is not likely. The other thing is, in Hartwell, you have a lot of constraints. It's not just traffic, but you also have wetlands that we have to be mindful of, the floodplain that we have to be mindful of, high water table. So those also are going to limit certain types of development from going into the parcels. For example, the parcel that is Waxy O'Connor's, there's actually very limited area from the existing footprint that they can expand. They can actually only go really up in that parcel. So it's what type of uses go well in that type of environment. But the other thing is, there's a lot of areas that you can put residential in that would be supportive to Hartwell. And that would be a further discussion looking at the town comprehensively rather than just one area.
Okay, thank you.
I see Margot from Bedford has her hand raised. Are you able to unmute yourself?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. I'm Margot Fleischman. I'm a select board member from the town of Bedford. And thank you for having this and giving us the opportunity to see what your plans are, our near neighbor. I just want to return briefly to the traffic mitigation study that you said earlier you have an RFQ out for. And I'm just curious about where the catchment area is for the mitigation, and is it just internal to the town of Lexington, or have you also considered the areas of, in a more regional approach? Because obviously Hartwell Avenue has outlets, 2 major outlets that would funnel people to Bedford, through to Bedford and on their way, unless they're getting right on 95. We anticipate that folks will be coming up McGuire Ave and up South Road the way that they do now. And we've seen a lot of increased traffic as more jobs have been brought to, for example, to Hanscom. We've seen greater traffic impacts in the historic downtown in Bedford. Now, obviously, the idea of maybe potentially eventually putting workforce housing there might mitigate that to a certain extent if you were lucky enough to get folks who could live work. But so I guess if someone could just speak to what that RFQ says about regional traffic impacts, regional traffic mitigation, or is it exclusive to Lexington? Thank you.
Sheila, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Thank you for your questions. So we actually have, and I realized after Mr. Baskin's question, we have 2 projects going on. We have the traffic mitigation plan update, and that focuses primarily on the Hartwell Bedford kind of, it's a bottleneck essentially. So we're aware that there's a lot of through traffic coming from Bedford and beyond to get to I-95. The RFQ addresses that. I will say the RFQ is kind of written a little bit loosely in that we want the experts to tell us kind of what we need to look at. But it does address sort of the getting the through traffic through, and then getting folks that want to go to the Hartwell Bedford area, helping to get them in. And the focus of the traffic mitigation plan is a shorter horizon, in that it's things that we can do immediately to relieve particularly traffic calming issues on sort of on the ancillary areas, such as further down Bedford, Winter Street, Eldred Street, Wood Street. So the focus is on that, but in addition to that, meanwhile, we're embarking on the 25% design plan, and that will focus more on a more major infrastructure plan of how to really get this traffic through. So hopefully that answers your question.
Is that RFQ available on the website?
Sheila, you're on mute again.
Yeah, it's under the finance department's web page. I can find the link and post it into the chat.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful. Thanks, Sheila.
I just want to remind everyone that we are looking forward to your feedback, and we have a SurveyMonkey link posted in the chat. So if you can just take a few minutes to answer, that would be great. And yes,
Avram, Avram had another question. He's unable to raise his hand, so he chatted me. So if anyone's having trouble raising your hand, feel free to chat me and I can add you to the list. Otherwise, you could give another type of reaction. I'm trying to look into the raise hand thing now.
Yes, I know he does do that. Yeah.
Avram, are you able to unmute yourself and speak?
Yes, yeah. I just saw it. Okay, so this is actually two related questions. I believe, remembering back to when the Hartwell Ave rezoning initiative started, like 2 or 3 years ago, or 4, whenever that was, one of the goals for the selectmen was not just to increase commercial real estate tax revenue, but to reduce pressure on residential taxpayers. And so thinking about that, I believe that part of this was that in order to get the hope for new development, wanting green office spaces, new laboratory buildings, and so on, that the town has to make an investment in improved infrastructure on Hartwell Ave. And so first question is, if that's correct, will that investment result in increased pressure on residential taxpayers over the short term? And then the second question is, if the hope for new construction comes, while those buildings are down because they're being replaced, will that result in a decrease in commercial real estate tax revenue over the short term?
I can try to take that, Sonia. To the latter point, it's unlikely that that impact during a construction period would affect the value, the assessed value of the property. So I think the short answer to your second part of your question is no. You wouldn't expect to see a big or even a noticeable tax impact of a particular property during its redevelopment. The other part of your question was, if I could summarize, would there be impact on infrastructure improvements to Hartwell felt by residential taxpayers. And what we're trying to do with this, both the rezoning initiative and with the traffic, the TMOD, the Transportation Management Overlay District Plan update for Hartwell. You've been a town meeting member a long time. You probably recall that the planning board adopted the TMOD plan, and we've implemented a lot of the infrastructure improvements already. So the TMOD plan update would have additional, it's expected that it would have additional infrastructure improvements that are possible there, but we would seek to have the development pay for that. You may also recall that there was some analysis of a tax increment financing concept. Generally speaking, the town manager does not, he's said a few times that he does not favor tax increment financing for a community like Lexington. So though it was explored, it was, there was a study, I don't expect that that would be a proposal that comes out of this necessarily.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I believe we have Charles Honing, who is the planning board member, who has a question.
I just wanted to add to Sheila's comment about the RFQ for the TMOD plan update. It does explicitly call out Bedford Street and Westview Street extend other names beyond the Bedford town line, and asks the study to consider in general terms impacts on Bedford's road system. So it was explicitly considered.
Great, thank you so much, Charles. And I believe Sheila has posted the link for the 25% RFP in the chat as well, if anyone wants to take a look at the RFP. I think George from EDAC EDAC has a question as well. George, are you able to unmute yourself?
Here we go. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I think it's important to remember that this is not a new project. That this is an evolution of a project that's been underway for 20, 30 years. And the focus is on commercial development. And the focus also considers that the property owners are in place, have commercial property. And what we are trying to do is to give them opportunities to upgrade their parcels. Where the consultant, the more recent consultant, a lot of the ideas in that proposal are not appropriate. And there is considerable question about some of the work, some of the conclusions from that. So there is a great deal of nuances that are important here. Now, the town has too much residential property and not enough commercial property. So the focus here is on enhancing the commercial property. And I don't think you want to lose focus and think that this is an open field that we can do whatever we want with. Otherwise, we keep reducing our commercial revenue. We keep reducing our commercial opportunities and employment. So let's keep our eye on the ball and do what we can to enhance the commercial not only revenue, but jobs on this property. I don't have the acreage, but if you do the acreage on what's available for residential in this community versus commercial, you find a very unsettling ratio. Thank you.
Thanks, George. We just have around 2 minutes. So if you have comments or if you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself at this point. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to share my screen again so that I can remind folks of the dates for the rest of the, I hope everyone can see my screen. So our next meeting would be on October 29th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and we'll be discussing stormwater and conservation. We hope to see you all there and discuss stormwater and conservation during that meeting. November 10th, we'll be discussing design guidelines. We'll also have Ted Browitz, who is our consultant, during that meeting, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Our public forums begin on December 1st, and the first topic would be zoning bylaw and design guidelines. December 7th, we'll be having we'll be discussing sustainability, and December 14th, we'll be having transportation discussion. January 7th, we'll be we'll have the draft zoning proposal so that everyone can look at all the comments that we've received so far, how they translate into a zoning bylaw, a draft zoning bylaw, and we'll have a final discussion with all the recommendations adopted in a meeting on January 21st between 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Is anyone?
I'll just add too,
Yes.
If everyone could leave their email in the chat or chat it directly to me, that way we can make sure you're on our distribution list. I mean, I'm sure you all found out about this somehow, but we are going to create a specific distribution list. So if you don't want to do it publicly, you can send it as a private message.
I see Smita's hand raised. Can you unmute, Smita?
Yeah, hi, good morning. So I know there was a question earlier about a residential impact on residential property taxes. For the commercial property owners on Hartwell Avenue, do you expect to give them any kind of incentives in terms of taxes or other things to do the development, the kind of development that's being envisioned? Thank you.
I can try to take that. The short answer is no. Their tax incentives are not under discussion at the moment. The town manager has, on a couple of occasions in discussing this over the last year or so with staff, has said that he, generally speaking, does not favor tax incentives because they often result in a temporary imbalance where people in parts of a district benefit while people outside a district pay. I'm oversimplifying, but this is a Reader's Digest version of the rationale that the town manager has given for not being that warm to tax increment financing. It's called TIF, T-I-F. And that's a perspective that's fairly common as a reason not to support tax increment financing. It's not to say that it wouldn't come up, but it's not under consideration right now. It has not been part of this rezoning discussion.
So then how, just as a follow-up, how do you plan to encourage the commercial property owners along Hartwell Avenue to do what the town envisions the project to be?
We're looking forward to having some guests come in for similar presentations to answer why the Hartwell area in Lexington is so sought after by life sciences and other commercial property developers and other businesses who want to be in Lexington. we need to set the table for them with, as Amanda Loomis, the planning director, was saying earlier, a predictable, rational zoning regulatory scheme so that we just removing impediments is going to give us the opportunity to take advantage of our assets, which have to do with location, proximity to the highways, Route 2, Route 128, Lexington's legacy as a place where with innovative biosciences. Sandhya, director, can talk more about, she has professional experience before coming to Lexington this year, working with life sciences, and she knows better than we do how Lexington is perceived outside of Lexington. So we probably don't need to provide tax incentives. All we have to do is kind of get out of the way. We're going to do more than that because we also want to protect the current businesses and current residents from the negative impacts of development. But part of what has impeded the development of Hartwell has been very restrictive zoning and the the abrogation easement and the wetlands and floodplain. So we have a lot of opportunity to attract new business without providing tax incentives.
I do want to add to Carol's point that not every town is offering a TIF. Waltham has never offered a TIF. Cambridge never offers a TIF, but we are looking at development everywhere. I recently had, I've been having conversations with a lot of developers, including 75 Hayden, which has been developed by King Street Property. They are one of our leaders in life sciences industry development. And they believe Lexington, because of the location, first and foremost, the location on 128 as well as Route 2 belt makes us one of the most attractive spaces for life sciences growth here in Lexington. When I say life sciences growth, I do want to mention that life sciences industry is spread in different parts and different sectors. It's not just related to R&D, which is a research and development, but there are several other things related to life sciences that we are trying to attract in Lexington. But we don't, the only issue is the commercial property availability. If you see the most recent headline anywhere, it is 75 Hayden, because King Street Property was, even before the entire build was done, they already had four companies, Dicerna Therapeutics and three more join the 75 Hayden, and they are the new tenants at 75 Hayden. So definitely there's a lot of movement, and I'm happy to speak more about the growth of life sciences in Lexington, but I just wanted to let you know that we have a lot of traction, and this is the time we should look at Hartwell rezoning so that we can attract the right size and the right development to that corridor. I see David Horton, his hand is raised. Do you have a comment, David? Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you. Wonderful questions and comments from a lot of people that I found very enlightening. My question or comment is really has to do with the people who live along Bedford Street from 128 into Bedford, perhaps even including people in Bedford. That wondering if the traffic mitigation study or some study will include, let's say, a permanent resolution of what it's like to live along that stretch of Bedford Street. Years ago, there was a thought about putting in a little side road or service road, side road to serve those houses from 128 into Bedford and maybe even beyond. But just wondering, will that be part of, is that ever, or would that be part of the traffic mitigation study, or another part of another study which would give permanent relief to traffic so that people living along those houses can get in and out of their houses without competing with all the traffic?
Sheila, are you able to take that question? Or Carol, if you have a comment.
Sheila, why don't you?
Sure. So the quick answer is yes, but we're relying on the consultant to understand what that is, because the traffic mitigation update, the kind of the shorter term, it is focused on relieving relieving the traffic anxieties for the residential neighborhoods. So Bedford, the community on Bedford Street is included in that. Any sort of hard major infrastructure, that is also definitely part of the conversation for the 25% design, which is further down the road at 2030. Well, the 25% design is happening now, but the build out won't happen until 2030 is what we're expecting. Yeah, so I think that's it. Carol, do you want to add to that?
Only to say that, as many of you know, the town meeting approved funds for the 25% design for improvements to Bedford Hartwell. That's been had a placeholder in the state's transportation improvement program for many, many years. So thanks to town meeting, there will now be a request for proposal going out to hire an engineering firm and a community engagement professional to develop a design concept for the select board's consideration for improvements, for example, to the jug handle, and looking at Bedford Street, not just for vehicular mode, but also for the pedestrian experience, the bicycling experience. So there's, in addition to the Transportation Management Overlay District plan update, there's the longer term planning and design for the Transportation Improvement Program.
Great. So I do want to recognize that it's 9:10 a.m. Thank you everyone for joining us. Is there anyone else who has a comment or a question? Feel free to reach out to us. Casey, you had something?
I think Avram had one more question if time allowed.
Absolutely. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm unmuted. So I appreciated your response about how attractive Lexington would be to these businesses, but I attended another meeting on this topic, I think sometime last year, where somebody on one of the town boards, it might have been the Economic Advisory Board or Committee, they made the comment that Lexington is currently perceived as being unfriendly to development. And is that your experience?
That's a great question. No, I don't think so. That's accurate. And I'm not sure who commented that, but that's not accurate. If you look at it's COVID-19, we are looking at when it comes to development, we are looking at a down cycle almost everywhere. But in Lexington, we had 1050 Waltham Street development approved by the planning board recently, and we also have 75 Hayden. We also are looking at 91 Hartwell. So there's a lot of development happening in Lexington and other towns. And I can't speak regarding other industries, but life sciences is at its highest, and we are still looking at a lot of funding happening in the life sciences industry related to COVID-19 and beyond. So I would say that we are still very much an attractive town for development. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Oh, okay. Just to be clear, that meeting took place before the pandemic, and I think the person's, I didn't ask him, but I think the person who said that, his implication was more like Lexington has forever been perceived outside of Lexington as being unfriendly to development, but I get your answer. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes, George.
Can I answer that you just said? That was born from, I think, the late 80s, when a citizen's article reduced the FAR on Hartwell Avenue from 35 to 15 in order to stop development. And the development at the time had to do with, I won't go into that whole thing, but there was some crazy development going on. The citizens reacted to it, and they cut back. Now, about 2002, I think, this part of this group that you're looking at came up with the biotech as a focus for Hartwell Avenue, and we increased that 15 to 35. We opened it up to 90 with 0.9 back 20 years ago, and we've been a leader in biotech ever since.
Sandhya, may I add another comment on this? So I think the other important thing for people to understand is one of the reasons Lexington is so attractive to the life sciences is because our staff is very well educated on this topic, both the development office as well as our fire department. We have had for many years good citizens who are in the fields, so that when biotech companies and other life sciences companies come forward and they say they want to use certain materials, a lot of communities get very concerned because they go on the internet and they see what those chemicals can do, but we have such a good knowledge of it. That is not a hurdle, which it is in most communities. And so I think what this plan is trying to do is make our planning and zoning bylaws as simple as the actual permitting process is for some of the chemicals and some of the processes that these companies use. And then that'll make Lexington the #1 choice for people, including the location. So thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I do recognize it's 9:15, and thank you all for joining. And I do see a lot of people have sent us their contact information, their email addresses. One last time, we will be sharing the slides and this recording on our website. Give us a couple of days so that we can save it as a YouTube video so that everyone can watch the recording. I believe Lex Media is recording this as well, and you should be able to view the recording on Lex Media as well. Having said that, if you have questions in the meanwhile, please feel free to reach out to any of us. On the town website, we have all our email addresses, and this presentation also has our email address, and I'll be posting this presentation on our website probably by the end of today. So thank you, everyone. Just a reminder, we'll be meeting again on the 29th. Thank you.